What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Walkout Network. It's your man, Ant Walker, here with another edition of Unleash, the weekly panel discussion show. Joining me, as always, are two of my best buddies in this industry, two of my favorite people. Let's go ahead and introduce them, although you know them quite well. First up is the senior editor of Sherdog.com. He is the jack of all trades who has mastered them all. Mr. Ben Duffy. Ben, what's going on?
Hey, I'm doing real well. We had an absolutely electrifying night of fights from the UFC back on Saturday. I can't wait to dig into it. And a few other things may have happened. So,
all right. And of course, every week the panel is anchored by the man with the stats, the facts, the figures, and the numbers. He is the associate editor of Sherdog.com and my good friend, Mr. J. Petr. J, what's going on?
I love weekends like these when there's storylines to come out. There's things I learned. There's things I went, man, I know I'm making the wrong pick. I know I'm making the wrong choice here, but I gotta remember. And with that in line, we had a very serious y'all must have forgot moment, because Jose Aldo, for the 23rd fight in a row, he has fought a top 15 guy when he beat Rob Font. He one-sided. Rob Font may have won a round, and Aldo is now on a good win streak at bantamweight, and made people go, oh yeah, that's right, we should pick Jose Aldo because he's one of the greatest to ever do it. So yeah, 23 fights in a row where this guy has fought top 15 competition at whatever weight class he's at. That's unheard of. Like Khabib Nurmagomedov's whole career, he fought what, 6 or 7 or 8 maybe guys in the top 15, and Aldo's been doing it since 2009. So Jose Aldo, man, I think we're probably gonna have to talk about him soon.
Yeah, he's definitely going to get a lot of love on this program. But we do have some other news that I feel dirty talking about anything before Aldo, but we kind of got to do it just based on the news cycle. But before we do that, 2 reminders. 1, to like, subscribe, share, tell a friend, tell that friend to tell 10 more friends. And also check the labels before you buy things to drink, because I got this like pear hibiscus sparkling water. Just sounds delightful flavor, and I take a sip and like, it's got a little zing to it, and I look and realize it's caffeinated.
Energy. So that got me one time.
Yep. So if I do a backflip, you know what time it is. So let's go ahead and dive right into it, because I woke up this morning to a stream of jokes on Twitter. Forgive me if I forgot to press send on something I had in the drafts, but looks like Tyron Woodley is getting that rematch after all. Tommy Fury has backed out of the fight with Jake Paul, the boxing match with Jake Paul, due to injury, supposedly. And Tyron Woodley is stepping up, fulfilling the desire to get another crack at the YouTube star. Fellas, what are we feeling about this?
I believe it was a broken rib and a chest infection. I think it's what Ariel Helwani said, or from the statement from Tommy Fury. 2 weeks notice for Tyron Woodley. And there's a clause that is apparently in the contract that if Tyron Woodley knocks out Paul, I still don't know which Paul it is. If he knocks out Paul, he gets $500,000, and this is part of the deal. So we know that's going to obviously inspire Tyron Woodley to go back to his vintage form and whatever on 2 weeks notice. I don't care. I don't. You guys might, and it's all yours.
Man, what is your emotion level right now about this whole thing?
I can't imagine this will sell. Even the people that bought the first fight, hoping that a hard MMA hitter was going to put this YouTube asshole in his place, they can't possibly want to tune in the next time. The first fight was absolutely dreadful, and it was absolutely what anybody who has seen more than one Tyron Woodley fight knew was going to happen. Like what else is there to it? He doesn't throw enough strikes to win a boxing match. That's it.
Hey, Ben, he really pulled the trigger this time. The last 6 or 7 fights, total flukes. This time though, he means business.
This time, Jose Aldo will throw leg kicks.
I am not that battered spouse. I don't believe him.
Yeah,
I'm 2 weeks notice. This guy's not going to have the gas to do this. I mean, what has he been up to? I mean, I truly don't know. Has he been making another rap song? Has he been training for the potential for stepping in? I doubt it.
Yeah, I doubt he's been training to step in for a fight necessarily, but I gotta imagine he at least has stayed in
Yeah.
a decent level of shape. I actually don't know where he lives now. I know when he lived in Los Angeles, and he was doing a lot of desk appearances for the UFC on Fox and whatnot. He was constantly in the gym, like he was making his rounds at boxing gyms in the area and whatnot. And he stayed ready to go. Essentially, I don't know what the level of motivation is to stay there now if there was nothing in the works, but at the same time, I can't imagine a guy as credentialed, as respected, with the legacy of Tyron Woodley, not being ready for some phone call at some point. Because, I mean, I know we'll discuss it a little bit more in detail later, but Rashad Evans, Bigfoot Silva, like coming back, like there is a market out there for fighters who are past their prime. And there's a lot of good money out there for them, as that $500,000 knockout bonus says. Like, hey, if you are a guy with a name, with a legacy, if you are ready, you can jump in there and get something done. And let's keep in mind the mix-up that happened with the Vitor Belfort Vander Holyfield fight.
Oh.
You know, there was some big check waiting at the end of a legend who was well past their prime, stepping in on short notice. So I would imagine he's going to have that in mind and be somewhat ready at least. Will it be enough? Probably not, because him actually having a training camp and revving up for this fight and originally wasn't enough. So
right, if he didn't have the gas to be able to push it and push the pace when he actually had the kid hurt in one of the rounds. Again, this is how closely I watched this fight. I didn't watch it live because I'm not a sap. Yeah, you can. You can, and it's okay. Someone's got to be. There's a sucker born every minute. But I think Duffy's right, though. I think this doesn't have the sellability that a Paul brother fight might, because people are going, oh, so what are we going to see here? There's nothing new. There's nothing sudden. This isn't Tyron Woodley has been training like a maniac for this fight to come back and, oh, it's all going to be different. I'm going to come out like I did against Vicente Luque. This doesn't have any of that. And so I think we might actually luck out by this happening. But it's by the Fury brother, Tony or Tommy, whatever his name is, by the Fury brother leaving this fight and Woodley stepping in. This might actually put an end to the nonsense gravy train pay-per-views that these guys run, because people go, I don't really care. This doesn't really matter. I mean, honest and truly, that it goes into box rec. So it's an official professional boxing match, but this feels more like an exhibition than most fights that happen. And I think this silly rematch and the tattoo and the contract stipulation, this all just feels like marketing. And I feel like people will finally see through that. Am I just the battered person on that account saying, oh, it's over soon?
No, I mean, you're realistic to like it, realistic without realizing how warped our world is.
Right.
That's probably really, I think the difference in selling this fight is going to be the price point. How much the last one cost? Was that like $40? I think it was like $40. If you have the price point reduced to like 20, 25, I could see that being a thing. Like right now too, we've got it was 60. Okay, man, drop that price point to 30. Drop it to 30. And there will be plenty of people gathering for Christmas parties and just friendly get-togethers and whatnot. You might want to have some background entertainment on that. $30 might be well spent for something like that.
They will never do it, because that would be a tacit admission that this is worth less than the first fight was.
Yeah,
I mean,
they actually haven't released the price yet, but it's expected to be the same.
Yeah, and like the Paul brothers have done a very good job of attaching their boxing matches to something that's bigger than them each time, and something that kind of stands out as some form of legitimacy. So, legitimacy in air quotes, I should say. So, like Logan with KSI, like they're both YouTube people, so it appealed to that world, and that in that world that was a huge deal. So you lean all the way into the YouTube thing. With Mayweather, I mean, we're talking about perhaps the greatest boxer of all time. So there's that. And Mayweather has lent his name to many of circus freak shows before. So it just fit right into his post like legitimate boxing career path.
I mean, he killed Tenshin Nasukawa, 3 knockdowns in like a minute and a half.
Yeah. Exactly. So and then you have Ben Askren and Tyron Woodley with MMA championship legacies attached to this brand. And then with Tommy Fury, now we're getting into real boxing, although he is as low level of a real boxer as you can get with that last name. But it was something to tap into that. Now reverting back to Woodley in a fight that wasn't the most pleasing to watch. A lot of the luster is lost, but like you said, Jay, earlier, a sucker is born every day. So I expect a few suckers to pull out their credit cards for this one. All right. Now I can't give this topic any more love before I get nauseous. So let's talk about something that really matters, and that is Jose Aldo, the man who was the subject of this week's stat. He's won 3 in a row at 135 pounds against absolutely top flight competition. What does the UFC do with this man next?
Aldo, I've said this so many times in the show that it feels like I almost have to apologize to the viewers for hearing this again. But former champions always have an easier path to retaining and regaining their glory, even in a different division. It's why Frankie Edgar got so many title shots. You can think of the names over the years that suddenly they get another crack at gold. And Jose Aldo is in that space. And I think he is, let's see, he was number 5 before the fight, and Rob Font was number 4. So he's probably going to rise up to maybe 3. He might pass Corey Sandhagen because Corey Sandhagen's lost a couple. I could see the rankers deciding to put that up there. So the logical fight is not to put him in a title fight. But we know how these things have gone, and we know how much the UFC wants to get rid of Aljamain Sterling and totally abandon that legacy. Selling Yan Aldo too is a tough one, but I feel like he's a better option than TJ Dillashaw or Merab Dvalishvili. That's a really tough one. And then you go down the rest of the list. Cardi Garbrandt's in another division. Pedro Munoz lost. Or no, Munoz just knocked at Edgar. But you really have to go. I want Aldo Dillashaw. I've wanted that fight for a long time, ever since Aldo was announcing his way to 135. I think that is a way to have a smash 'em up derby so that you can almost have a de facto 4-man tournament. You got on this bracket, you have Aljo versus Yan to settle that. On the other one, you have 2 former champions, and Aldo and Dillashaw fighting it out for the shot to go for the gold. I want that to happen, but I'm so wary of UFC thrusting guys into title shots when I don't like it. So probably he's going to fight for an interim title in his next fight.
Ben, what's your take on this? Where do you see Aldo matched up next?
If the champ, if Petr Yan weren't in the title picture right now, he'd probably be fighting for a title next. Just, the only thing preventing it from happening is that Yan beat him so bad last time, and it was so relatively recently. I almost think they should book him against Dillashaw, or even wait. Like if Cruz beats Munoz this weekend, book him against Dominic Cruz. That's another dream matchup that we never got back in the WEC days, and we could have now. But book that, but just understand that if Aljamain Sterling has to pull out again, and the fight with Yan gets pushed past the first quarter of next year, they're probably just going to strip Aljo.
That's exactly right.
Or if they fight and Aljo wins, I think they pull Aldo into an immediate matchup with him.
As much as I like that idea, Ben, I just don't see it happening simply because of how fast this schedule moves. Anything involving waiting around just doesn't seem to be what the UFC is all about these days.
Unless you're Colby Covington.
And even then, I mean, this is a guy who got passed over for a title shot with an interim belt around his waist. I
He
think
got
twice.
stripped of an interim belt after like 50 days.
Yes.
Yeah. So let's not forget that part of Colby's history. But I think for sure Aljo is going to get stripped if he can't make a fight against Yan soon. But in the meantime, you gotta have something else happen. And what better thing to happen than Aldo fight TJ Dillashaw? And that solves two problems you have right there. Aldo and Dillashaw in the title picture are kind of problems. One for Aldo is that he, as you said, he just got floored by Yan in the very recent past. So he has to do a lot to get back to that spot. Dillashaw is coming off of a EPO suspension and then a very, very controversial decision win. A decision win so controversial that the loser in that fight got a title opportunity immediately after.
See also Jose Aldo, Marlon Moraes.
Exactly. So you're going to have to have something to firmly stake the claim for either gentleman that they deserve that opportunity. What better way to do that than put on a fight between the two? And then on top of that, that fight promises to be action-packed. It promises to be a strategic display of just pure beauty. And on top of that, it kind of fulfills some of our pound-for-pound wish fulfillment when these two were reigning champions in separate divisions. So I'm all for that fight. It just makes way too much sense.
It makes a ton of sense. It's a fun stylistic matchup. There's one thing I am really cautious about it, because again, I love the fight. I want the fight to happen. That would be my immediate answer for what's next for Jose Aldo. My concern is the UFC would preserve that fight for a pay-per-view. And I want to see 5 rounds of that. I want to see that headlining an event. And that's not a pay-per-view headliner, but it's a blockbuster fight that you can see as the co-main event to Alexander Volkanovski versus Max Holloway 7 or whatever it might be. I feel like it deserves the kind of Leon Edwards, Nate Diaz, Nick Diaz, Robbie Lawler treatment of the 5 rounds, even though it's a non like that. That's the fight. If it's a not headliner, that should be a 5-round fight. So maybe we'll get lucky. No, we won't get lucky. We'll just see 5-rounders forever.
Hey, that was going to be my next question. Actually, is this the fight to establish outside of the Diaz name the 5-round co-main event? Like, is this the fight? Because I mean, we're talking about what would have been a super fight just a couple of years ago.
And it's two guys that, like, there's no question, they're both capable of fighting 5 rounds.
Exactly.
That, and the UFC used to have official number 1 contender matches before interim titles became a thing. That used to be a thing. That could be a way to bring it back by making an official number 1 contender fight at 5 rounds. That's a way to kind of make it so it isn't just a Diaz treasure.
Yeah. Or the alternative is Aljo is stripped. Yan, being the current interim champion, is promoted to undisputed champion, and then you introduce that interim belt yet
for
again.
TJ and Aldo. Okay,
yeah. As a
I joked about it being for the interim,
but that's the very realistic path of it happening. Where I don't think the general fan will be too angry about that. That makes some sense to me. If that's the way we get a 5-round between those two, I'll take it.
I'm trying to remember. Did Adesanya ever fight for a interim belt?
Yes.
Didn't he fight Kelvin Gastelum for the interim belt? Mm-hmm. So it went GSP to Whitaker. Whitaker was the interim at the time. GSP relinquished. Whitaker was advanced, and then Gastelum and Adesanya for the interim. So it was the interim. Okay, so yeah, there is a precedent for that. I thought so.
Yeah, I mean, not that precedent matters in the UFC, but it's a nice thought. It's a nice thought that we try to preserve on this channel. All right, fellas.
Jed Meshew would trash me right now for my optimistic outlook.
Yes. One thing he wouldn't trash, though, is any conversation of Aldo on the GOAT list. And when we had him on the show, he damn near shot us because he was so mad about Aldo not being like our GOAT all across the board. Now let's revisit that conversation, after, what Jed was on like several months back. And this was like, 2-3 wins ago for Aldo. We're revisiting that conversation, man. Where do you place him on your GOAT list? Or does this affect his GOAT status at all to you?
He's no worse than third. Like that's it. Like if you care about PEDs, he might be second. It's like George St. Pierre, Jose Aldo.
Yeah, I mean, it's really hard to argue. I mean, I have that big old asterisk for John Jones, the Barry Bonds size asterisk by his record because of the accomplishments, achievements, and multiple failed drug tests. Yeah, man. I mean, GSP is number one. He's my number one. I have abandoned my younger, I dare say more juvenile opinion that Fedor is the best and shut up. I don't care. Fedor is number one no matter what happens ever in the history of the sport. Why? What was my stat of the week? How many fights in a row? I'm not saying wins. Obviously, he hasn't won them all, but fights in a row where he's fought top 15 competition back when there was no UFC rankings and there was only Sherdog. And we had him, everybody on the way, Mark Hominick and Cub Swanson, and everybody all the way back to Chris Mickle, who was not ranked at the time. He has been fighting ranked guys. I don't know if you can say that about any other fighter. Like, just their entire legacy. GSP didn't do that. He had an incredible long string of ranked opponents, but not 23. And then you look at John Jones. John Jones has only fought 27 times. Well, I don't believe Jake O'Brien was a ranked opponent when he fought him, or any of those. Stephen Bonner probably wasn't. So the level of competition matters so much when it comes to this. And the only reason why he's not number one is because he didn't win. I don't want to say all of them. I mean, he's 30-7. This isn't a guy who folds to tough. He loses to whom? He loses to Holloway, Connor, Volkanovski, champ. He loses to Marias, who was
WSOF champ,
knocking on the door to being a champ himself. Almost beat Cejudo before stuff happened. Petr Yan, champ, and it's just his greatness can't be questioned. And I feel bad for those that do because of the Connor fight. And that truly is what I think people deride him for, is his quick knockout loss to Conor McGregor. But I don't, I have Conor maybe in my top, probably just in my top 5 at featherweight, whereas Jose Aldo's number 1. Max, you're right there, but not there yet. And Volkanovski's knocking. So is Uriah Faber. Mike Thomas Brown's right there too. Aldo has to be top 3, period. Like, I just there's not a good way to say otherwise, I don't think.
Yeah, I want to revisit where I had Aldo previously. I think I had him just outside of my top 5. I think I had him like 6 or 7, if I'm not mistaken.
Did you have Cormier?
I had Cormier as 5.
That's what I thought.
I believe. Yeah, I had Cormier as 5. And I'll still hold true to Cormier being high up on that list, but man, Aldo's got to take somebody's spot in that top 5. He's got to, perhaps that top 3 that you're talking about. And if you factor in the PEDs, then he might be 1 or 2. It's when you look at strength of schedule, he is really in the top percentile of this whole thing. Like, when you talk about strength of schedule, let's throw Fedor all the way out the window. Let's throw Khabib all the way out the window.
He's the number 1 super heavyweight.
I mean, it's crazy what this man has been able to accomplish, and he just might be. I mean, this is a guy who very well could have won the lightweight title had Dana White given him that opportunity to fight Anthony Pettis at 155. This is a guy who, at separate eras of his career, clearly the best at 145 for a long time, could have been the best at 155 had he been given that opportunity, and might be the best at 135 despite his loss to Yan. Like, he just might be. What we saw from Aldo is some of the most beautiful veteran savvy stuff that you can imagine. And this stage of his career, like, he might have 3 separate points where he is the best in 3 different weight classes. Like that, it doesn't get much better than that.
And I can't get over just how unlikely it is. Like, if you'd asked me in his absolute heyday, like 2012, 2013, I mean, you look at the guy back then, and he was a freakish, like, fast twitch athlete. And I mean, he had all the skills, but what he brought to the table was very formulaic. I'm going to kick the shit out of your legs. I am going to display possibly the best takedown defense in the history of the sport. And a couple times a fight, I'll throw a flurry of punches if you give me the opening and see if I can finish you. But if not, I'll just kick your legs off the whole time. Like that was what he brought to the table. And oh, and by the way, like, I'm a muscular dude who has a hard time making 145. Like, given all of that, he seemed like the least likely candidate to be having this kind of resurgence at bantamweight of all things, where he's dealing with faster fighters. He himself presumably has lost something out of the top gear by being 35 years old and having the kind of mileage he does. But now he's such a different fighter. He's one of the most intelligent fighters I've ever seen. Now he brings exactly whatever it's going to take to beat the guy in front of him. Against Pedro Munoz, he was the guy with the more diverse striking arsenal. The guy that once upon a time just got by on like those leg kicks and those flurries and like a right cross, like was just varying speeds and distances, just completely befuddled him. In the fight against Font just this past Saturday, how many times, even at the highest levels of the sport, the greatest fighters in the world, do you hear a fighter get the correct instruction from his corner between rounds and then go out immediately and do what the coach said?
The first strike he threw in that round was what Didi said to throw.
Yeah, Didi said, start throwing your leg kicks.
Bang!
And he threw 4 leg kicks in like the first 60 seconds of the round. And after that, it was no longer volume versus power. Yeah. It was just power because Font's advantage in volume went away because he stopped throwing because Aldo had just started punishing his legs. It was brilliant, and you don't see it very often, even from the best fighters in the world. It's just an unbelievable run he's on.
Yeah, I think also too, let's point out Andre Pedernera's role in this whole thing as well. How rare is it that a fighter reinvents himself while under the same coaching staff? How often does that happen? Like, at this stage of someone's career too?
See, I immediately went to Matt Hume and Mighty Mouse, but that changed him when he went to Matt Hume, not after he has continued.
He's been there and been established and and reached the highest of the highs, and then switches up the whole game all over again.
Like, his power on Rob Font was the kind. Think of the Max Holloway Dustin Poirier fight. Holloway had the advantage of the volume. He actually outlanded Poirier when the dust settled. But every time Poirier landed flush, it didn't hurt him, but it kind of stung him and made him go, whoa, just that momentary pause to break up that kind of. That's exactly what Aldo had against Rob Font. And that's not something he's historically known for. He's known for, what Ben said, the sudden killer instinct if he gets it. But other than that, he's just content to just destroy you wherever he wants. And he'll do it intelligently. Like, people trashed on Aldo when he fought the Korean Zombie, when Korean Zombie hurt his shoulder and Aldo started high kicking that shoulder to finish the job and put him down and ultimately finish him on the ground with strikes. It's brilliant. And that's the kind of fight IQ that you get from a fighter who is so comfortable with his team, like with Didi, because he has been working with Didi since he was a kid. And I think that kind of relationship shows a lot better than Jim West telling Aspen Ladd, tell me what you're doing right now. It's a totally different arrangement and relationship that Aldo knows he's got my back and he can see exactly what's happening. Do the thing, you do the thing, you make the adjustment, and he will win the fight. And I appreciate that in an all-time great type fighter.
So many inappropriate jokes I kept in the holster there. All right, let's keep things pushing here. We'll go on to swing or miss, action-packed card Saturday night. But do you think Cheyanne Vlismas and Mallory Martin were the proper recipients of the evening's fight of the night honors?
This is going to sound crass, and it's going to make me sound like a terrible person.
So Adonis is waking up. I got to grab him. Hold on.
All right. But, you hear those stories. I'm sure it's actually happened a few times, but urban legend type things where a dude will go into a diner and like leave a $50,000 tip for his waitress. There's an implicit thing there. He's not leaving her $50,000 for like what a great job she did bringing out the home fries and the chicken fried steak. Like there's no explanation for it. It wasn't a bad fight, but it wasn't even the third best fight on this card. It wasn't the best fight that went to decision. It's just inexplicable. And the only way I can explain it is that somebody trying to make that decision, like, really wanted to make Cheyanne Vlismas happy. Like, or they're cutting Mallory Martin and that's her severance package. I don't know which it is, but there's no defensible explanation based on the fight itself.
I think that in itself is kind of problematic because, yeah, I look at a lot of the fights that happened, several of the fights of the main card. 2 of the last 3 fights were more deserving. The Fiziev-Riddell fight was absolutely more compelling, and every strike they landed was just that noise it made when it hit. It had that tension that Cheyanne Vlismas and Mallory Martin didn't have. It didn't have the swings of momentum. It didn't have any of the things that usually line up for a typical fight of the night bonus. And obviously we're just media members that are watching the fights, but we have a history. We know a pattern. We can look at a fight and go, well, that one won fight of the night. It might not have been the most technical. It might not have been the most whatever, but it was a crazy slobber knocker where it was dramatic and fun and crazy. That's getting fight of the night. This didn't check any of the boxes. It was the lone women's match of the night, and women are very disproportionately do not get fight of the night. This is the 3rd fight of the night this year of 40 cards. So that's a very low number, and women make up about 12, 13, 15% of all fights. So that's low across the board. This fight didn't earn it, and it, I feel weird. I feel uncomfortable about it because I don't want to think differently. I don't want to think to question the kind of thing and look at it and go, well, something else must be going on here. I don't want to have that kind of train of thought about this.
No, you're.
Go ahead.
Well, you pointed out, you and I have both watched every UFC event this year, every UFC fight this year. You've done play-by-play for at least 99%. Yeah, okay. Nobody's even had to clock in for one of them for you this year.
Except for you when you had my back at the Wei Li Shang fight.
But better fight than this.
Yes!
I mean, we don't always agree with what the UFC chooses as the fight of the night, but we can usually guess what they're going to choose.
Yes.
Like on the preview, I'll often say this fight's gonna be the best fight of the night, even though it's not gonna win fight of the night.
Yes. You yourself said that about Fiziev-Riddell.
Yeah, I would never have guessed that this would win fight of the night, even undeservingly, because you were right. Like it became one of those, and I don't say this proudly, but one of those, especially like strawweight, flyweight women's fights where there's never any question who's going to win. Like someone's winning every minute of the fight, but there's also really no question there's going to be a finish. It's just kind of a one-sided kickboxing match. And that's what this fight was. Like it was okay. But yeah, there was no drama. There was no, there was no suspense even over whether there was going to be a knockout because Vlismas wasn't throwing that kind of volume or that kind of power. And Martin wasn't doing the things that would have got her back into the fight, even if they would have worked. So,
right. There wasn't even the question of who's going to get the round. There wasn't oh man, what are the scores going to be? It's a foregone conclusion. There's a lot of those that just add up to that you go, I don't understand. And I'm going to leave the pontificating for why, and the sudden name change and the Instagram change and the removal of pictures of the husband and any of that, you can keep that and all that. But it raises questions when the next fight after it is 5 times better, and it wasn't the best fight of the night in Brian Barberine and Darren Weeks. But that was that sloppy, silly, fun fight. And I mean, I'm going to miss, I think is what we had, that this was officially the swinger miss. So I believe we're all missing on that, which is just fine.
Like and had to leave the room. He was so upset about it.
See, and I think the baby started crying because he was so upset about who got the fight night bonus. But actually, I do have a question while Ant's doing this. What should have won fight of the night for you? Would it have been Riddell? Would it, or Riddell Fiziev? Would it have been Yan? Or not Yan? I'm sorry, Aldo Font.
I don't think it would have been Aldo Font. It was a fun fight, but it was pretty one-sided, and the only real suspense was whether Aldo was going to get that 5th round finish.
Well, Max Holloway, Calvin Kattar got fight of the night. I'm just putting it out.
I don't get, and I'd have to look and see what else was on that card and remind myself.
True.
But I liked Fiziev versus Riddell. I liked Barberena versus Weeks. In fact, I would argue that if you take out the 1st round finishes, because a 1st round finish is never going to get fight of the night. Really, if you take out those 3 fights, this might have been the worst fight of the night. Or no, I take that back.
Knight
versus Menefield was terrible. Yeah, Knight versus Menefield was terrible. But yeah, you could argue that this was the 2nd worst fight of the night that went past the 1st round. Like Morono versus Gall. Like Morono's my boy, but it might have been his most boring fight.
I mean, it got silly, and that. But at the same time, there were moments where you wonder what's going to happen, and there was no. UFC loves drama. They love a storyline. They love to be able to say, "Oh, it was right there," and there wasn't any of that. But it's too bad. Should we move on? I think we can move on.
Let's go and move on. Yeah,
I think we'll move on. We'll go on to shallow cuts. I won't time us because that's see what happens. So. I'll just ask you a quick question about this past weekend. And it's a fight we haven't talked about yet. We actually specifically didn't mention in any of the lineup we went to because it's so interesting to me that Chris Curtis knocked out Brendan Allen. He's a ranked middleweight now, at least according to Sherdog. So I got to ask you, Ben, what is the ceiling for this guy? We did not think he was going to win this fight. What do you think?
Okay, I think the ceiling is actually higher than for some of the most obvious analogs. Like, if the floor is Houston Alexander is for real. I'm just saying,
I know.
The way he's dropped in, it reminds me of Houston Alexander in the UFC, or reminds me of Sokoju in Pride, where he just came in as a relatively unheralded guy and completely splattered 2 heavily favored fighters. In the case of Sokoju, 2 of the biggest favorites in Pride history, which is saying a whole fucking lot.
Little Nog.
Little Nog, and I think it was even worse, the Arona one. Yeah, like 16 to 100. But anyway, I think Curtis's floor is higher than either of those guys, because I mean, I was definitely taken in by Sokoju. I expected much more out of him. But with Houston Alexander, like when Joe Rogan was yelling Houston Alexander is for real, even me, as a relatively nascent fan, I was like, no, this dude is just an incredibly hard-hitting slugger. Like, he's not, this ride is not going to continue. With Curtis, it's a whole different thing. He's a much more established fighter. Curtis is a guy that I was getting ready to just give up and be like, oh, dude, this is going to go down as one of the best journeymen of his era who never quite made it to the UFC. Always lost one fight at the worst time. Ended up over in PFL and just get put through the meat grinder with 2 fights with Magomed Karamov and 1 with Ray Cooper. So he fought, three fights in a row, the 2 best welterweights PFL has ever produced, arguably the 2 best fighters like PFL has produced. I just figured he'd never quite make it over the hump, but if he ever did, he's got he's got a complete skill set. He's a good fighter, and he's doing this out of his best weight class. Like, they're going to have to give him somebody ranked. You can't take a step back from Brendan Allen, but if they say, okay, take a deep breath. You've won your first 2 fights in spectacular fashion. Let's book you for 4 to 6 months out. Let's get you back down to welterweight, and let's give you a fringe contender at welterweight instead of giving you like a top 10 middleweight. Like, I don't want to see this guy fight, who's kind of down there at one. I don't want to see this guy fight Jack Hermanson or something.
Man, that's tough.
I want to see him. I want to see him fight like a Nico Price or a Randy Brown.
He could easily be in that action fighter stable, but by knocking Brendan Allen out, I think he has exceeded that level already. just by beating a guy with the acumen, like the one thing Brendan Allen could have done to win this fight. I wrote about this in the Sherdog Prime Picks, where he had a very distinct and clear path to victory, and walked into punches instead, and then knees and everything else like that. But remember, Chris Curtis fought at 205 this year. This is a guy who can amorphous blob his way to whatever weight class he wants to, I guess, and still look good. He said he wants to stay at middleweight until he loses.
Okay, well, I'll probably pick against him next time, and I'll probably be wrong again. And I could not possibly be happier to be wrong. Like this is a fun ride to watch.
So you're saying that Chris Curtis has become your new Marcin Tybura? Yes, I like it.
No, because I hate Marcin Tybura fights. I like watching Chris Curtis fight.
So I want to talk about something else on that happened in this fight night card that we actually haven't talked about either, while Ant's dealing with parenting duties. Clay Guida, Clay expletive Guida, 40 years old tomorrow, as of the taping of this broadcast. When you hear this broadcast, Clay Guida will be 40 years old. Just won a performance of the night $50,000 check. Has 10 UFC post-fight bonuses. Clay Guida just tapped out a fourth degree BJJ black belt that had won how many Mundials, Ben?
Seven-time Mundials winner.
Unbelievable grappling credentials, and Clay Guida is the first man to submit him, doing so in a ridiculous fashion by simply surviving. And thank you, Keith Peterson, for being no nonsense and letting him survive, because it was the right call and the result happening the way it did. So I guess
Keith Peterson making a case for himself as the best ref in the business.
Oh, yes. He is.
He was the perfect ref to have on duty there, because he was not going to stop this fight just because
there are punches to the side of the head.
Just because one guy is flurrying and the other guy's covering up, but nothing's landing hard. Like, Guida was fine. He was hurt, but he was fine.
Throwing back occasionally.
And I was thinking the whole time, it's like, Peterson's not going to stop this, and this guy's going to punch himself out. Like, I did not expect a submission. I figured, okay, we might get a draw if we get like a 10-8 first round, and then Guida wins the second and the third. Or Guida's just going to win this thing 29-28 because, Santos is shot. But despite it being almost a 10-8 first round, when they walked back to their stools after the first round, Guida looked better.
I thought of this fight when I saw it happen. I thought of the result. It would be Maria Akapova, Shannon Dobson is the first fight I thought of in what is about to happen. I thought Guida was going to pick him up, slam him down, and finish him off with strikes, and then he submitted him. So I guess the question that we have to ask is, how do you solve a problem like Guida? Just a guy who won't go away, has a chin that's still there, cardio that will never die. And I'm going to ask you this question: how the heck do you solve a problem like Clay Guida?
I think you have to play his game to a certain extent. And that's what Santos didn't do. He went on. I mean, granted, I think most people in that situation would have tried to do the same thing. If you got someone hurt that bad, you try to finish it. But what you don't do with Clay Guida is burn all your energy in one swoop. You just don't do it. You kind of have to always be ready for the long haul. You have to be prepared for an iron chin. You have to be prepared for everlasting cardio. You've got to be prepared for like this never die attitude. So there's always got to be something. Hey, if you are standing there, you're hammer fisting a guy to the side of the head and it's not doing anything, and you see your shots aren't landing, and you're looking at the ref to stop it, he's not buying it either. You got to switch up your approach. You've got to go for positional dominance. You've got to back up and force him to, while he's still wobbly, to come back at you. Like you have to do something other than just continuing to burn energy, and that's what Santos messed up at.
And it was just truly a sight to behold to see Clay Guida get his first submission since he tapped out Takanori Gomi back in the first day of 2011. I mean, Darren Elkins, move over, buddy. Although, did we ever see them fight? No. I mean, Guida only stayed at featherweight for a little while, but oh my God, I'm into that fight right now. Sign me up. Or Clay Guida versus Donald Cerrone. Just saying. That could be one. Yeah, I saw your eyes lit up for that one. I guess I'll answer one last quick question then about this fight card, because this is another fight we didn't talk about. Manel Kape knocked out Jagr Shamagalov after surviving some adversity, and he got hit pretty hard too. And he's now 2-2 in the UFC, 2 first-round knockouts, 2 decision losses beforehand. And he had a mighty call out in the microphone, and I'm the superstar of the UFC. And so I guess the question that I'll try and answer is, does he have the star potential at flyweight? Flyweight's a division where I don't know if there is such a thing as star power. And that hurts my heart to say, by the way, because I disagree wholeheartedly with the words I just said. But the UFC will not sell flyweights, period. The UFC's best chance to sell a Mighty Mouse title defense was to bill Chris Carriasso, who had 2 knockouts on his ledger, as having 1-punch knockout power. That was the best they had to offer for that particular fight. The UFC does not seem to know how or care about marketing flyweights. And that is doing a major disservice to the fighters involved, because Manel Kape is one of many fighters in the division who have surprising power for their size. They're very quick. They're entertaining. They're good on the mic. You have personalities now. And I believe this division right now has some more personalities than they're letting shine. Like, I think it was on the post-fight show, Duffy, with you and Keith Schilling. We're talking about other names in the division, like Alex Perez and Matt Schnell, who both are entertaining guys. They both have the ability to put on a fun fight and say some fun things. Alex Perez has some nasty leg kicks. Davison Figueiredo obviously should have been a megastar. Brandon Moreno isn't scratching the surface, even though he's terrific. I think their buy rate for the pay-per-view was just what, 250, 200,000. It was something very, very depressing. He doesn't have star power in terms of how the UFC will sell him, but my God, if you put him at 135, they would sell him like crazy. If you put him in another company, they would go nuts for him. Ryzen loved Manel Kape when he knocked out Kai Asakura, but he should have star power.
Is it just going to take the right person, the right guy to come along? I mean, there was a time when we thought featherweight would never sell. Jose Aldo was the best fighter in the world, and nobody outside of like the likes of us gave a shit. It took the right guy to come along. Unfortunately, he cemented his superstardom by starching Aldo, but there was a time when we talked this way about featherweight.
That's true.
Yeah, like if
the right guy.
If there was like a Prince Nassim type guy at flyweight, that would kind of be the catalyst. And I think we've seen that with every division that there's been star power in. Someone in particular put that on the map.
So is that what it's going to take? Is that true? That's actually a really legitimate question to have.
It's going to take more than like the champion holding a toy snake and throwing it out into the crowd. It's going to take more than that.
Yeah, well, everything's more than that.
Like
even sell a guy with Legos,
the Burger King crown, and like the purple.
Yeah, like so it's gonna take more than that, and maybe Manel is that guy later down the line. But I just the thing is, the problem with flyweight, if you are not already the champion, the UFC doesn't really care about you. They don't care about building you up to the title fight. So I don't think they're gonna care too much. I think he's just going to float around and do what he does, and if he makes it to a title shot, so be it. But it's not going to be, the marketing machine is not going to be behind this man.
I'm going to pitch a fight that would not be worthy of main event status. Might barely open the fringe main, like maybe open the main card, but probably not. But would be one of the most entertaining fights they could make at flyweight. Manel Kape versus Tyson Nam. 2 absolute flamethrowers in a division that doesn't have them, but they won't. If they do, it'll be like opening the prelim card. Yeah,
and it'll be something that doesn't make the rounds outside of this very select group of people that care enough to make a podcast. Like that's exactly what it'll be wasted on.
But you know what is a good smart thing though, and this is something I did think about him moving up to 135, because this is a guy who did have trouble. Like his last fight, his last win, he missed weight by 4 pounds, 5 pounds, something crazy like that to move up to bantamweight. That works to sell people. Look at Sergio Pettis. He was a flyweight doing good things, beating great people. Sergio Pettis, who is now the Bellator champion, has wins over Joe Benavidez, has wins over Brandon Moreno. He has
Henry Cejudo.
Henry Cejudo has that win. And he built himself, I guess built is the word, by moving up to 135. And look what he just did. So, Ann, what did he just do this weekend, if you please?
He just authored one of the definitive KOs of 2021 against Kyoji Horiguchi. After getting absolutely tooled for the majority of the fight, lands a beautiful spinning back fist to put his lights out. That spinning back fist was so gorgeous. Like, I don't know if you saw this. Someone posted the like a gif of the knockout or like a video clip or something on Twitter, and then one of the replies under it was a video of Sergio training that same technique. And it wasn't like, I know to someone watching that, you just might think, oh, okay, it was a lucky shot. No, that was not a lucky shot. That was a very beautifully engineered move to miss the kick. And if you're training Muay Thai style kicks or just spin kicks in general, if you are missing your target, you are supposed to follow all the way through and spin all the way around. Now, you can spin all the way around and regain your balance and the fight continues, or you can bring something extra along with it, like a spinning back fist. And we don't see a lot of people do that, despite how almost simple that technique is. I can think of, when I used to work at a boxing gym, me and the other trainers there on Saturdays, we'd spar each other. And one of the guys, his students always through that spinning back fist. If we had any of our students or clients join us in sparring, you had to watch out for that move. And I remember being caught with that by one of his clients, through the leg kick, missed it. I see the body turning completely around. Okay, this is my time. I rush in thinking I'm gonna get my close range boxing on, and and I get smacked upside the head with an Everlast logo on my cheek. It's a beautiful, beautiful technique. But my question to you fellas, is it your KO of the year?
The silence is very, very important because this is a really, really tough one. Ant, you picked up on something that I'm really happy you did, because not a lot of people did. He not only did he train this, he tried this move multiple times in the course of the fight. This was not the first time he threw the shot. I mean, this is the kind of thing you see guys like Paul Felder, Easy Dos Santos. Some of those guys will follow through especially their big high kicks with a spinning back fist. That's just something that some of the big guys do. And Pettis did that, and he landed it. And Horiguchi landed like Ric Flair, taking the biggest, just a shot. Arms open, just plop. But it was no joke. He was stretchered out. He's okay. But, you got to make sure and everything like that. It was that picturesque knockout that you want on your highlight reel forever. I mean, Sergio Pettis in his interviews was talking about this. It was like my MMA News or something like that. He was talking to somebody earlier in the week, talking about, I want that highlight reel. I don't get many knockouts. I need that kind of thing. And he got it. There's a lot of oddly memorable knockouts this year. And so one of the questions that we would have brought up to our potential guest that will join us again sometime in the future is about what goes into the knockout to make it memorable, to make it incredible. The stakes, because Ignacio Bahamondes smiting Roosevelt Roberts in the last seconds of the fight with a spinning wheel kick was spectacular, but the stakes were low. Fedor Emelianenko coming out there and destroying Tim Johnson in Moscow, stakes and everything like that. And then you have like Corey Sandhagen and all those kinds of other ones. But no, it's not my knockout of the year, because my knockout of the year is still Chris Barnett spinning wheel kicking at Gian Villante. I know there's more spectacular ones, but Huggy Bear spinning wheel kicking 260-pound Gian Villante, there's something special that I really, it resonated with me that I don't know if anything can pass. What do you guys think?
That, sir, is the right answer. That's my KO of the year. I don't to see someone with that like height disparity land such a beautiful spinning heel kick to the temple, against someone that much taller than him. Like it as a short guy, that's just beautiful to me. I love that. It's hard. If you put a gun in my head and say that one wasn't eligible, I probably go Sandhagen over Edgar, because that was just pure violence and just misery for Edgar to receive. But yeah, it's Huggy Bear. It was gorgeous.
The only other one I'd kind of throw into the discussion here would be Namajunas over Zhang, because that was the only other one that had stakes as high as Pettis over Horiguchi, even if the technique wasn't quite as like just picturesque.
But that was still picturesque technique. Like the way she the way she got the instep perfectly on the temple and was instant lights out. And I think it was off of was it off of like a feinted jab?
It was really slick. It was practice.
Yeah, I thought it was like a feint jab and switch kick, and just
she throws the least telegraphed high kicks.
Yeah. And actually, it wasn't even a switch kick. I don't think she switched stances. She just brought the front
a roundhouse.
It's just which is a very difficult thing to do if your body isn't conditioned for it. Like because if I'm not mistaken, she's a Taekwondo black belt. That's something to worry about with someone with a Taekwondo background. If they can get that front leg up really quickly and with power, like that is bad news. So
Machida was known for that. That was one of his no chamber front leg high kick. Yeah, it was sweet. But other stakes, I mean, Usman Masvidal, it was a punch, not a kick. Stakes were high, but the technique, and that's the question.
Yeah,
that's such an important question.
Like that was gorgeous. I mean, we're at this point we're playing with house money, because there isn't really a wrong answer here. There really isn't. And then when you take things into the total context, I think all of those fights have something extra attached to them that make them more than what they were in that moment. So I'm not mad either way.
And then we can't even touch on like Yuri Prochazka and the spinning back elbow. It's a beautiful embarrassment of riches. And I'm happy that we can have. I mean, we're going to have this conversation again. There's still some more events to go, but yeah, I'm excited that we can have this conversation. You know what I mean? Where we can, when Ben said, Rose and Zhang and Ant's eyes lit up, like, oh yeah, that's a good, like that's that kind of conversation.
Yep. So all right, fellas, let's keep things pushing here. Let's see now. Let's briefly, we're gonna break out our seasonings. We're gonna break out some oil for the pan, and we're gonna ask that age-old question: how's taste my crow? Ben, what's your crow tasting like this week?
It's tasting Brazilian. For the second fight in a row, I picked against Jose Aldo. I did not learn my lesson. I just got to stop underestimating the man. Like it's not even fair to think of him as past his prime. He's just in a different phase of his career right now. That's all there really is to it. You know, he's a better fighter than Rob Font right now. He's a better fighter than Pedro Munoz, you know, a couple months ago. I just, you know, it doesn't matter that he's 35. It doesn't matter that he's in a different weight class. It doesn't matter that like he's wearing the miles on his face. You know, he's just one of the greatest fighters of all time. And he hasn't lost a step in any meaningful way for his performances right now.
All right, Jay, how's Taste My Crow this week?
Going spicy here this time. We're going to put in some peri-peri, some nice warm, hot South African pepper, because I did not expect Manel Kape would do what he did. I know he had the capability of it, but I didn't think he was going to be able to get off like that, because I know that Jaga Shumagalov has kind of, I don't want to say devolved into a grinder, but he has definitely changed his approach since going to the higher leagues of the sport. And I expected he was going to just, you know, the kind of the wrestling grappling, pushing Kape into the fence, where Kape looks at the camera and he makes these faces and he's just like, and he's stuck and loses a tough decision. And then Shumagalov hurt him, and I went, oh boy, this is turning out different than I thought. And then Kape laid into him. So yeah, give me some spicy crow right there, because Manel Kape, he impressed me there.
Yeah, you know what? I'm gonna ask Ben if he can purchase me a ticket to Brazil also, because my House Taste My Crow comes courtesy of the aforementioned fight between Leonardo Santos and Clay Guida. I really thought that when this matchup was booked, it was like, okay, this is made to be an execution. Leonardo Santos, a guy who, without his injury woes, without the long layoffs, would very easily be one of the top contenders at lightweight and perhaps even one of the biggest stars in that division. His body's breaking down on him at the wrong times and whatnot. He just never can seem to get physically right on track. But a matchup against Clay Guida is kind of what you need to make the fans remember who you are and what you're capable of, because you're talking about a guy who always brings it in, Clay Guida, guy who's always high energy, who's action packed. So it's going to bring the action out of you as well. If you're playing your cards right. And then it's a very winnable fight for him, as we saw in the opening moments of that fight, what he was able to do. But without, treading over ground that we've already covered, that clearly did not happen. So,
but the body work he did, that was what did it. That was what he should have kept on doing, because he had Guida dead to rights a couple times with that body, the knee to the body especially.
Yeah, and he had that front kick with the toe landing right into the liver,
stabbing kick.
Yeah, just stabbing right to his liver. I mean, it was gorgeous technique, but it just wasn't enough because Clay Guida, as we said before, is a monster. All right, fellas, let's move on here to the greatest title segment in all of media history, and that is I'm Not Surprised, Mr. Falcons. This is where we share something that surprised us or ironically did not over the course of the past week in this really, really bizarre world of fights that we've decided to dive head first in. Ben, I'll start with you. Oh, no, actually, no, Jay. Actually, I'm going to start with you today. Tell me.
So, MMA won't stop. Retirements aren't real. No one cares if you say goodbye to the sport and hang up your gloves, because you're going to fight again. Marcus Davis is 48 years old and just won a fight. Granted, he won a fight over a 4-15 opponent, but Marcus Davis returned from retirement to fight a professional fight in mixed martial arts and won it in the main event of an event that Burhan Brow is supposed to headline, but whatever. So we can't stop. And we know the next coming out of retirement name is somebody you mentioned, Mr. Walker. Is it Rashad Evans is coming back again? He's doing it again. He's 42 years young, and he is deciding to fight again. I believe he'll be coming back at light heavyweight. And what he is doing is he is signing up to Khabib has a fight promotion that he purchased. I believe it was called Gorilla FC at the time, and he rebranded it to Eagle FC. And has put on staged events in Russia and maybe Belarus, in that area, and decided, hey, in January, Florida doesn't care about COVID. Let's put an event in Miami. And so Eagle FC is coming stateside, and Rashad Evans will be making his return from retirement on this card against an unannounced opponent. And the main event is Tyrone Spong, who is doing MMA again. After his he won, but ill-fated attempts in World Series of Fighting many, many moons ago against Bigfoot Silva, who also retired from the sport and then decided not to retire again. And I mean, just call Eagle FC Retirement FC and let's get it over with.
Normally, I would just be, at perfect liberty to ignore these fights, but Evans and Silva are two of the guys that I think least need this. They're two guys that left the sport on a string of bad knockouts. It's kind of like their former opponents in Chuck Liddell and Frank Mir, both of whom, Mir's still taking bad knockouts. It's unfortunate. It's scary. I hope whatever they're paying him, ends up being worth it. But it makes me sad, especially in the case of Evans, who seemed to have other irons in the fire.
Bigfoot actually came out of retirement a couple months ago, back in June, and he fought a guy, and he fought a French opponent, I think in like Serbia or Croatia, just a random "what are you doing here" kind of fight card, against a guy who tested positive for enough substances that France has indefinitely banned him from competition. They threw him out of the country, a French fighter, because of all the drugs he was taking. And so Antonio Silva fought and lost by knockout. Ray Antonio Silva.
Yeah, this one is particularly bizarre. I mean, besides Rashad Evans being on this card, which is problematic in its own right due to the knockouts that he left the sport on. As you said, Ben, like he's got other things going on. Like this is a guy who does desk and analyst work and did some commentary and whatnot. And he's a charismatic guy. You know, he's someone who definitely can make a decent living for himself outside of getting his head punched in. But this Bigfoot Silva Tyrone Spong one is so troubling because while Bigfoot Silva and Tyrone Spong are definitely guys who should be pretty long in the tooth with the amount of bouts that they have underneath of them, their paths since their retirements from MMA have been wildly different. Bigfoot Silva, let me make sure that I'm not.
He went to BKFC. He fought Gabriel Gonzaga. He lost badly. Yes, that is correct.
He's been getting knocked out in several different combat disciplines since leaving the UFC.
Rico Verhoeven kicked his face off.
Yeah, he's been.
I can't believe they've sanctioned that fight either.
Yeah, he's been getting his brain dislodged consistently since he left the UFC, which he was getting his brain dislodged in the UFC on his way out the door. And this has been going on since 2015 or something like that he's been getting these horrible getting starched knockouts, in addition to the horrible getting starched knockouts that preceded that, way back to even like the Strike Force Grand Prix where Cormier iced him. Tyrone Spong, on the other hand, while he didn't have a necessarily successful run in MMA with WSOF, it wasn't because he was getting slept. It was because he just stopped doing it. Right. It's because he went back to kickboxing. And what was he doing in kickboxing? He was knocking people out. When he broke his leg in I believe it was Glory, he broke his leg. It's actually the same break I had. Shin snapped in half.
Go Kawasaki. Bang.
Yeah. You know what he does? He goes to boxing. What he does in boxing, he's knocking people out. So this is a man who has been knocking people out in a variety of ways since he left MMA to fight a guy who's been getting knocked out in a variety of ways in MMA and beyond. So this is disgusting.
I think concussion protocol, if you've taken like more than 3 knockouts, like you shouldn't be able to get licensed to fight again until you have a 30-minute sit-down conversation with Gary Goodridge.
Ooh. I do know that certain states, I have seen this personally, that certain states will suspend you and not license you for a string of bad losses or a string of just losses. And they'll say due to low skill or competitive edge or something like that. And they will just say, we're not going to take your license. But this is Florida. And Florida just sanctioned. Didn't Florida sanction the Vitor everybody fight? Because California said, no. Yeah.
Florida is a haven of tomfoolery. So, Ben, why don't you share with us your I'm not surprised Mr. Falcons moment this week?
Okay, sure. I was actually surprised, like legitimately surprised when the UFC released Kevin Lee. It wasn't just a matter of not re-signing him. They like flat out released him. I was surprised. Just, Lee is a very good fighter. Who has been prone to bad losses at bad times, but he's been a top 10 guy in 2 divisions for the last 5 years or so. He's a very good fighter, and guy with a personality. Marketable if he ever put together enough wins to actually get back into title contention. So for them to cut him loose was surprising. I wasn't surprised that he found out about it by email because hey, keep it classy. I'm further surprised that he was not immediately snapped up by one of the UFC's competitors. He seemed to be he's not old. He's not especially shop worn. I figured somebody would snap him up immediately. And not only was he not immediately snapped up, but Bellator president Scott Coker made it very clear between the lines that they had been in negotiations and those negotiations had simply not come to fruition, which really can only mean one thing. It's that Lee overestimated his worth at the bargaining table and priced himself out of their price range. Maybe he thought he had an in because his brother Keith has fought for Bellator for several years. Maybe he just overestimated his own star power. I imagine he'll end up somewhere. he's too good a fighter and too interesting a guy not to end up fighting for prizes somewhere. But yeah, color me surprised. One, that the UFC cut him. Two, that he did not manage to strike a deal with Bellator.
Yeah, definitely surprising on both counts there. I'm not surprised Mr. Falcons moment comes courtesy of Geoff Neal, actually, who just several days ago, this is ahead of a fight. He's fighting this weekend at UFC 269. He was jailed on a DUI charge and carrying a weapon unlawfully. What I am definitely surprising that, a DUI charge is coming so close to a fight. Like, what are you doing in some level of intoxication behind the wheel
on Thanksgiving morning?
Yeah, but then having that so close to a fight, like, I'm having flashbacks to John Jones's numerous run-ins with the law and whatnot, his misadventures behind the wheel. But what I'm more surprised about even is the response of his lawyer in a statement to MMA Junkie. His lawyer, Brandon Barnett, well, actually, this was to ESPN that he said this, but MMA Junkie reported on it, said if it turns out he was not legally intoxicated, which we expect the blood test will show, there won't be a gun charge either. So the fact that they're actually fighting this, so typically with a DUI, you don't see a lot of people fighting DUIs. Like, that's pretty concrete. Okay, I was intoxicated, just take whatever punishment and you move on. He's not taking it. So leads me to believe that there's something more to this. And as far as the gun charge, if he was intoxicated, that makes him carrying the firearm illegal. Texas is very liberal with their use of firearms. So they pretty much give you an AK-47 when you cross into the Texas border. Ben has like a collection of them in his basement right now. Every time he leaves the state,
it's just off the frame.
Yeah, they give him a whole bunch of guns. So if he turns out to not be illegally intoxicated, then the gun charge is lifted because he was legally carrying otherwise. So very interesting story there. I'm curious how this plays out beyond the fight that he's scheduled for against Santiago Ponzinibbio, but just legally what this does. So this is very interesting from a guy who seems to be pretty straight-laced. Like, we haven't heard of any crazy incidences or rumors floating around about misbehavior and whatnot. So be interesting to see what happens.
But whatever happens, Jeremy Stephens is absolutely fighting tonight.
Yeah. All right, fellas. So we're very, very short on time here. So let's make this one quick. Bellator Bantamweight Grand Prix. What are our thoughts besides beautiful?
I like that they have it at 8 men and not 16. I know there was big calls for a 16-man tournament, and that there was the embarrassment of riches. The division is the strongest it's ever been, so we'll put it there. I like that they didn't. I like that they opened it up specifically to the way they did it. I mean, we know the rankings are very suspect, but I do appreciate that it was champion and title challenger right here, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So it is the specific, this is how we're taking it, snapshot tournament. I like that a lot. I don't necessarily know if these are the top 8 fighters that the bantamweight division has to offer right now, but I enjoy that because the alternative is having 8 more fighters, and then you throw people in with losing streaks, and then you throw people in with like prospects, and like, I don't want to see Juan Archuleta, former champion, fight 5-2 losing streak Cass Bell. It's just who was a ranked fighter who would have been included had they gone in 16. So I like the 8. I like that it's going to be compact, and I like that it might actually be done of the year. Can you believe this might actually theoretically, doubtfully, probably not, maybe might be done of the year?
And then the
RIP.
Well, we'll wait for him to come back. Yeah. I'll just weigh in and say, I think 16 would have been too much for all the reasons you mentioned. Plus, that with the unpredictability of MMA being what it is, it just increases the chance that you're going to have some alternate injury replacement dude step in and win the whole thing, which kind of invalidates your whole tournament to start with. No, and Pride did 16-man tournaments, but it was still the same number of rounds, basically, because they'd usually have the semifinals and the finals in the same night. No, otherwise you're turning it into this, 18-month ordeal. And again, you're probably having some late injury replacement who may not even have been in the promotion when the tournament started, like step in right at the end and win the whole damn thing.
Yeah, and then on top of that, you have to think about what happens to the division after the tournament is over, and we've seen that become a roadblock to the potential matchmaking afterward. Like AJ McKee, for instance. Like, we had this long featherweight tournament. So many of the ranked featherweights were involved in it, and now who does he fight next? And it's kind of like it kind of doesn't matter. So we don't want to see that problem with whoever wins this Grand Prix. Like, we can have some contendership going on outside of the tournament. That way we have a very smooth transition into the division operating as normal. So I'm all for it. Sounds beautiful. Let's get it. All right, gentlemen. So UFC is the only big game in town, and that's because 269, the pay-per-view event, will be taking place, and every other promotion has decided to kind of step aside and let this play out because we do have some heavy hitters. So let's get into it really quickly here. And we're going to ask one of our favorite questions on this show, and that's who you got. Geoff Neal, the aforementioned suspected DUI driver or whatever. I don't know what the proper legal terminology is there, Jay. But whatever. He's supposed to be fighting Santiago Ponzinibbio, a very, very pivotal. Did I say pivotal? Well, I wasn't talking about the footwork, I swear. All right. A very pivotal welterweight contest. Ben, who you got?
Before the Thanksgiving debacle, I would have leaned Neal. I think he's a bigger, fresher version of a similar fighter. It was already my pick for fight of the night, and I would have leaned Neal. Now I don't know what to think. It's currently a pick'em. I kind of feel the same way about it. I'm still waiting to be reassured that Ponzinibbio is not like on his way to shot. And I thought Neal might have been the guy to show us that maybe he is. But now I don't know.
Jay, what do you got?
When UFC made Santiago Ponzinibbio versus Miguel Beza, I thought this was the trap fight because everybody was hyped on Beza. They wanted him to be the next thing. Carmel Thunder is going to be the next test, and he did what he was supposed to do. Ponzinibbio kind of met him in the middle, outstruck him, did what he had to do to win. And Geoff Neal has struggled when it comes to the top guys in the sport. Now, I say that, I mean, it's just who? Wonderboy Thompson, Neil Magny. Those are two top 10 names, top established names. And I don't want to play MMA math because it's a terrible thing. So I'm going to play MMA math because it's a terrible thing. Well, Ponzinibbio knocked out Neil Magny, and Neil Magny beat Geoff Neal. So that means nothing. And I know it means nothing. So I'm going to say Santiago Ponzinibbio wins a decision. But Ben, you're right. This is going to be a lot of fun, and it's going to earn fight of the night until fight of the night actually goes to Jillian Robertson, Priscilla Cachoeira. Because what?
All right. Well, this might not be the smartest thing to do, but I'm going to go ahead and pick Geoff Neal. Despite whatever issues he has going on outside the cage, because as I said in my I'm not surprised segment, that statement from his lawyer just makes me think there's a lot more to this story that probably isn't really nefarious. I'm leaning toward he's the real innocent until proven guilty thing. So that being said, if we see 100% Geoff Neal, I think he wipes the floor with Santiago Ponzinibbio. This version of Santiago Ponzinibbio, I should say, and this version of him. As much as I want to see him back to his top form, I think we might be past that considering the layoff and the injuries and whatnot. So give me Geoff Neal to win this, and give me Geoff Neal to win it big. I'm going second round KO here. Neal at his finest is extraordinarily violent, extraordinarily powerful, pretty slick too. I think his technical abilities are quite underrated. If you get a listless sort of past it version of Ponzinibbio like we've seen lately, sounds like a slaughterhouse to me, man. Give me Geoff Neal for the win. All right, fellas. We have the GOAT of the women's divisions fighting to defend her title, her bantamweight title, because she does hold the featherweight crown as well. But Amanda Nunes, bantamweight champion, will be taking on Julianna Pena. Ben, who you got?
I've got Nunes, and I've got her big. She's still the most dominant fighter in the sport, and Pena has one real plausible route. Well, not plausible. Never mind. She has one imaginable route to victory, and it is going to be hard sledding against Amanda Nunes. If she needs to get the fight to the ground at all costs, and both women in the cage know it, that's a death march. She's going to be on the end of Nunes's punches and kicks for however short a time this fight goes. She doesn't have a great traditional shot takedown from the outside, so she's going to need to get takedowns from the clinch against maybe the scariest phone booth fighter on the planet. This is death.
Okay, I feel like we come at this question the wrong way in the who you got. So I probably should restructure it. Does Amanda Nunes get the finish? Mm-hmm. I mean, if you say Pena's going to win, then okay, cool. But I'm going to go out on a limb here. I think Amanda Nunes is going to submit her. I don't think she's going to bat her with strikes. I think she's going to pummel her into a submission. Not necessarily a club and sub, because it's more ugly than that, but like what she did to Miesha Tate, then what she did to or what she did to Megan Anderson, that gets hit and goes, oh my God. Because let's put it this way. Julianna Pena she's 2-2 in her last 4 with submission losses to Valentina Shevchenko and Germaine de Randamie. I don't believe those women are specialists at grappling. I believe this is something they have both learned, and I also believe this was Germaine de Randamie's first career submission. So I cannot see how Julianna Pena has any path to victory if her best chance is to get to the ground with a woman that can throw up a reverse triangle armbar because she's bored. So I think that this question is, I almost should narrow it. Will she get the finish within the first 2.5 rounds before the 2:30 of round 3? I think she will. I think she's going to get the finish probably in the first round, if not the second at the latest.
Yeah, I mean, it almost feels silly, and without, I don't want to disrespect Julianna Pena because she's
right. I don't say this out of rudeness,
but she's been one of the top women's bantamweight fighters for a long time. But Amanda Nunes is the best to ever do it. And the thing is, unlike Germaine de Randamie, unlike Holly Holm, unlike even Megan Anderson, there was some path to victory against Amanda Nunes. They clearly did not take that path, but there was some path. I just don't see it with Julianna Pena. We're talking about a ground specialist who has been submitted by kickboxers. We're talking about someone who on the feet, at least for the early portions of her career, had one of the silliest coaches in the world that didn't think leg kicks were real, and would penalize them in training for trying to block body shots and stuff like this is the sort of approach that her career has been framed around. And it's like this knucklehead mentality that, while good in spots and while she's scrappy and it certainly has gotten her wins in the past, and it certainly kept her in fights that she otherwise would not have been in, well, you don't want to do that against Amanda Nunes. If your approach is to take a lot of punishment and find your spot and then drag it down and submit someone, Amanda Nunes ain't the one, brother. She ain't the one, because you're going to get your head beat to a bloody pulp on the way in trying to close that takedown. As Ben said, she's not going to power double her or anything. She's going to try to drag it from the clinch, in which case you're in the clinch of this destructive force, this machine of Muay Thai. No, thank you. And then you're talking about taking it to the ground with someone with a long-standing BJJ and judo black belts who has no problem getting you on the ground, beating the life out of you, and choking you as you're begging for mercy. And that's exactly what I think is going to happen to Pena. She's going to try to get those takedowns after getting clobbered in the clinch. Maybe Nunes just shoves her down, And from there, we're talking about ground and pound central. Maybe she taps the strikes. Maybe Nunes has a sliver of compassion and decides to take her neck instead. Either way, Julianna Pena is going to the hospital when this is over with, and there will not be a belt sitting next to her in the bed. So this is Nunes's fight to lose. The only way I see this being dropped is some sort of fluke, slip on a banana peel moment, or Nunes is really enjoying family life and not training the way she should, which I doubt seriously. Although the family life is cool, as you can hear, my background going. And my son is very excited for this one. Charles Oliveira, Dustin Poirier. The lightweight title is on the line, fellas. I'm so excited to talk about this one with you guys. Ben, who you got?
I really haven't even buckled down to tape yet. I've been leaning Poirier. I think this is his moment, but Oliveira is just such a better fighter than he's been over the course of his career. He's still improving. It's been a long, rocky road to the top for the man. Certainly the unlikeliest no smoke and mirrors, like UFC champion of the last few years. He can win it on the feet. He can win it on the ground. But I do think Poirier is going to pull this one out. It should be a great fight.
Jay, who you got?
Oliveira is that champion that you want, because he's the champion. Hear me out. I know he's not a very popular one. Everybody's excited for Poirier, because he's the kind of champion that can decide or whatever. I'm going to win any way I want, and I can win any way I want. I can take you down and submit you. I can drop you with punches, because that's suddenly a weapon in his arsenal. You can take me down and I can reverse you. There's all these different ways he has to win. And that is incredibly important, because one of the things we always talk about in fight prep is that grappler versus striker, the grappler has the ability, at least in theory, to place the fight where they want it to take place. To put it, if they want it on the ground, they can put it there. If they want to pressure them and make them be afraid of the takedown, have to fight on the outside of the cage. Whatever they want to do, they can do this. And that's the kind of thing that Oliveira and his skill set provides. And he's got a win streak to prove it over 3 excellent names. Kevin Lee, Tony Ferguson, and Michael Chandler are names you want on your resume, period, the end, full stop. And Justin Gaethje tried, and, well, Kevin Lee isn't around to do it. But then you got Dustin Poirier, whose lone loss in the past, 5 years, is to Khabib. And that was because it's Khabib. And the other people he's beaten on the way, Pettis, Gaethje, Alvarez, Holloway, Dan Hooker, Conor McGregor, third time, because Conor McGregor's losing his mind about stuff. Just, it's the resume that dreams are made of, that you look at and go, okay, this is the craziest so-and-so stretch. Like we often talk about, like John Jones having a run of former champions back to back, Rampage and Rashad and Vitor, a terrifying list of names. Well, Oliveira is one of those names on Poirier's list. And I think Poirier is still going to knock him out. I think he's going to be able to do what Michael Chandler could not do in the first round of their fight. Because you remember, Charles Oliveira was in the danger zone in the first round. He was hanging on by a knife edge. If it had been a different referee, if it had been Herb Dean, if it had been a couple other referee names, the fight would have been stopped. Dan Maraviota let it go, and it was the right thing to do, like Keith Peterson did for the Clay Guida fight. Dustin Poirier has that scary killer instinct most of the time. Like the Dan Hooker fight, he didn't want to fall into anything crazy, but he has the ability to put his foot in the gas and do the kind of thing, even when the worst is happening. Like the Justin Gaethje fight, his leg didn't work, couldn't walk, still managed to lay out Gaethje after a ridiculous all-out battle. So I think that Poirier has the aggression and the power that is going to get that draw that reaction of Oliveira that Michael Chandler had but couldn't kind of follow through on. So I'm going to go Justin Poirier first round knockout.
Yeah,
Man, I'm with Ben on this one in the sense that I haven't really done my deep dive in what this fight looks like. But damn, it's just so beautiful.
But the
I'm
X's
leaning
and O's of this fight are a blast.
Yeah, it's insane. It's insane. I'm leaning toward Dustin Poirier because okay, my daughter's joining us to wrap up the broadcast. All right, baby, please don't. Are you excited for this fight? Because Daddy's excited. I know. We're gonna watch it together. Okay, she's gonna grab the mic. Let me hold the mic a little bit higher. All right, here we go. Here's my pick. Dustin Poirier, I think, is going to win this, and I think it's going to be a finish. But this is going to be a competitive, like a back and forth thing. I think it's going to look like probably a less dramatic version of the Holloway fight, where they do a fair job beating each other up. But I think the difference here that Oliveira is going to have trouble with Poirier is that Poirier, in his aggression, is very smart. In his brawling, he's very smart and very selective. This is not a guy who recklessly goes in there and does it, despite his reputation for that. When he's in those moments, he is so incredibly technical. He's so incredibly precise, and he's thinking ahead. He's planning ahead, and he's not just wanton brawling. When you wanton brawl against a guy like Charles Oliveira, and you're surprised by how good his stand-up is, you find yourself on the ground with him where you really don't want to be. And that's led to a lot of his submission wins. It won't lead to it with Poirier. Poirier is not going to approach it reckless. Poirier isn't the easiest person to get down anyway. And if you do get him down there, he has the strength. He has just enough technique to make things a lot more difficult for you. If this were just a pure jiu-jitsu battle, of course, Oliveira will win. But when you're talking about jiu-jitsu with punching people in the face while you're on the ground, Poirier's got too much power. Poirier's got too much strength. As much as I'm conflicted on this one, I could see it going the other way, but I think either way, we're going to be really happy and we're going to be really sad with these results, because both men seem to be exemplary people that we enjoy watching. And I think both of them make fine champions, but it's Poirier who's going to finally get that undisputed strap this time. So Dustin Poirier is my pick. I think third round KO sounds about right. It's going to be competitive, and then it's going to end. So Poirier gets that belt.
And what I love about this fight the most, and I'll keep it brief here, is that if and when they fight again one day, because Dustin Poirier is 32 and Charles Oliveira is 32, they got a lot of tread left on the tires, even they got a lot of miles on them. The rematch will play out differently than this one does. Okay. And that's not something I could say to a lot of fights that would happen. Like if you watch here, perfect example, when Conor lost in January, and you look at the rematch and go, well, something similar is probably going to happen. Well, Poirier was on his way to a 10-8 round before that happened. It's going to play out the same way. If whomever wins this fight, the second fight that they have sometime down the road will look different and will be more interesting in that regard.
Yeah, very good point. I mean, this could be the start of the next great rivalry.
But it will be a respectful one, and I like that. I like that.
I do like that too, and it's appropriate for both men. So does Oliveira have some like unfight related product to exchange for a bottle of hot sauce with Dustin Poirier?
He has horses. I think that would be difficult to like ship.
Yeah, that would, and you can't really exchange that on the weigh-in stage. So
maybe there's the Bronx sauce. Who knows?
That more things that I probably shouldn't say on air. So fellas, I think that is a great place to wrap things up for this edition of Unleashed. Big thanks to Ben. Big thanks to Jay for every week coming on this channel and just chatting it up with me as I enjoy the outskirts of mixed martial arts media. You can find them on SureDog.com. Of course, with a big pay-per-view fight comes two of the guys who do the best work in the business on duty for SureDog. So Jay, I'm assuming you're on play-by-play again.
Oh yeah.
Okay, absolutely. And Ben's going to have some fantastic wrap-up articles and
15 fights on the docket, boys.
Yeah. Oh wow. Yeah. Preview and post-fight show from Ben, so check that out. I'm just starting to, I'm trying to balance dad life and my full-time job here, but I'm really excited to start on my next MMA on point project. So I'm gonna crack open the Google Docs and get started with that this evening. So fellas, let's remind those folks to like, subscribe, share, tell a friend to tell a friend, tell that friend to tell 10 more friends. Stay beautiful, stay positive, stay looking at the labels at your drinks before you realize they're caffeinated and you feel like your heart's going to jump out of your chest, and stay sexy. I'll see you when I see you. Peace.